Good morning. What brings me here today is a story that resonated when I read the article in the Washington AARP newsletter recently about the CARE Act, and I was unaware of it. And when I read it, it really caught me because last April my husband had planned very complex surgery for a colon cancer that has had for a long time, and they've sort of always been staying ahead of it. Now they're at the place where they had to do really extensive and very complicated surgery. And we had a wonderful experience at a major hospital in Seattle. We had a fantastic surgeon who did everything right in terms of preparing not just Ed, but myself and his daughter as well. I felt like we were very well prepared, and as well as prepared as you could be for something like that. He had Ed go through some prehab, which was a whole new concept to us about things he absolutely had to do before he would do the surgery, which my husband was very offended at, but he did it, and he later understood why. Anyway, he had, unfortunately, had the surgery. The first surgery was success, but he had he wound up with sepsis after 5 days. He'd been up and walking and was planning to go home, and all of a sudden he crashed. And when he crashed, he wound up in the ICU. And he was in the ICU for 18 days with extensive life-sustaining strategies going on. And we really were told he had a 10% chance of surviving, and to prepare for that. And he's not someone to be quibbled with about. He decides when things are going to happen, and so he has a very strong will, and he had full family support through the whole thing. And he had this incredible medical team that included 2 residents. So we had been in the hospital for 30 days when it became very apparent right then that day that he needed to be out, according to the hospital. And he was not at all ready to go home, and I certainly wasn't ready for him to come home. And so they discharged him from the hospital and readmitted him minutes later in their intensive rehab unit, which was in one floor down. And while he didn't really need rehab, it kept him in the hospital for 5 more days. But at the end of those 5 days, rehab was very anxious to get rid of him because he really didn't need rehab. He needed some other kinds of things. And so his discharge was so unlike anything that had happened to us during that time. It was disorganized. The people didn't seem to know him. They didn't seem to relate at all to us. And we had been so involved with the medical staff all along to have this experience in the last 5 days when we were exhausted was really disconcerting. And so what wound up happening to us was that I needed to come home to get grab bars put on the walls in the bathroom and make room for a hospital bed and get space for him. And while I was gone, they made the decision to discharge him that Friday afternoon. And so when I went back Friday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, they were saying, well, he's leaving today. And I hadn't had any training, and he had to have wound care. He had to have he was tube fed. He had insulin and had to have glucose checks, which I had never done and he'd never needed. He was on antibiotics. He got the same shot that Stu referred to in his stomach, which was very, very painful, plus insulin, and he had many, many things that needed to happen. And I was truly, first of all, exhausted, and second of all, scared to death. And I said, I just want to be his wife. And, not to worry, not to worry. These are all easy things for you to learn, no problem. Home health will be there to help you out, and treated it as if they were sending me home from having a cavity filled. So when the afternoon came along, they postponed the discharge until 6:30 at night on a Friday night from Seattle. So we had a 2-hour drive from Seattle to Shelton with a man that had a surgical wound from up under his rib cage all the way down, had diarrhea and nausea in the car. I'm driving the car. That was the plan. And I thought that was so incredibly insensitive to think of discharging someone who'd have to go that far in a car at the height of Seattle's bad traffic with 2 bags of medications that were grocery bags this high, full of medications, and a list that showed what they all were and what their schedule was going to be. Not when to take them, but just, and by the time I got home, I was frantic because I didn't feel secure in any of the medical procedures that I had to do. I didn't know what order they needed to be done in. I couldn't yet figure out the medications in terms of which ones needed to be taken with others, which ones were not supposed to be taken with others, which one needed to be taken with food, which ones needed to be refrigerated, which ones needed to be cut in half, which wounds needed to be cleared at what time. And I remember going into the bedroom, closing the door, and crying my eyes out and saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. And so that went on for 2 weeks. Our home health person showed up 5 days after we were home. The bed never arrived. He slept in a recliner for the first 2 nights, and finally we figured out how to rig up the other bed. But all this time I'm waiting for some of this help that didn't come and didn't come. So I have to say my anger level was almost as high as my emotional anxiety. And out of that came some thoughts about what would have made it different. That's why this bill just rang so true to me. And one thing is to identify, and this, I don't see this costing more money, identify a person along the way who's your patient advocate, whether it's in the system or it's someone clearly in the family, but they are identified as the advocate. And they are the stream through the whole thing. Ed was on 5 different floors. He had 35 different doctors see him, 35 doctors billed him. He had, I don't know how many other specialists, but it was innumerable. His total bill was $830,000. A second thing would be really good instruction. And I'm a teacher, so I'm like Kathy in her comment about how many times you learn something. You need to see it done and see it done and see it done. Yes, you see it done in 30 days, you've seen it done a lot, but toward the end is when you're really ready to see it done. Look at me, watch me, this is how I do it. Now, the second one is, I'm going to watch you do it, and I'm going to watch you do it 5 times. Not 5 times in a row, but maybe 5 different times throughout the day. And then I'd like you to go ahead and do it without me watching and tell me how it goes. You need to have that kind of practice. I think there's a great opportunity to use media as a way to instruct and provide help. All those rooms have TVs. There could be a video available on how to do those things so that you can watch it when the person's sleeping. It should be available to be on your iPad or your tablet so that if you can refer back to it. That seems not too complicated to do, and I know those videos already exist. And another thing that we found was that we were giving unbelievable amounts of written material. I have a stack that's just under a ream of paper that are things that we were given on how to do things. Way too much, way too much. And I don't think that I read much of it because I felt overwhelmed by that. And I kept thinking, I'm a literate, well-educated person, and I'm put off by this. I can imagine what it's like for a lot of people who aren't there. The next thing is that I think there needs to be a checklist that could be done again that has questions you ask the caregiver about the home. Do you know, do they have a place to put the medications? Is it checked that it's safe for the children or the dogs or whatever? There's so many simple things to ask that could be asked ahead of time and give a family a chance to prepare their space. And health and safety is another issue, and I think that OTs and PTs do a good job of asking about that, but they don't keep asking. If you say, no, I don't have grab bars in the bathroom, okay, the next question is, what are you going to do about that? How can we help you with that? Not, oh, let's go on to the next question. And then the other thing that I felt like we really needed help with that was significant and again, not costly, is helping the person set up a schedule before they ever leave the hospital of the medications and the care. You get the patient up at this time, you do these things. Don't forget, you need to use the alcohol wipes on all these things before you do it. After you've done it for 4 days, it's nothing. But those first 4 days are completely mind-boggling when you've never done it before. So that's my perception of what happened, and I was thrilled to see this bill. I agree that any of us can be a caretaker tomorrow. And I think that I'm certainly eye-open, and I hope it isn't just viewed as a senior issue, because anybody with a family member who's leaving the hospital and being discharged without better care is in trouble. So I'm glad you're all here to volunteer and get the word out.